the News Channel 5 network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here on a Wednesday. We're coming live and direct for you, and we invite you to join in the conversation this morning as we have one of our regular guests. We're always glad to have him on as we're going to be talking the law and specifically medical malpractice. With us this morning is Clint Kelly, malpractice attorney here in the States.
Morning to you, sir. How you doing?
Good to see you. Yeah. Good to see you. I mean, I always look forward to you coming on because it's an interesting conversation. Last few shows, we've gotten good calls, but I don't know what it is about medical malpractice. And you know, you followed these kind of stories as we do them in the news, but it's like, I learn something new every day about it because I guess the medical field evolves and we see more different types of problems surfacing, it seems like every other month.
Yeah.
Cases.
There are situations that have been around for a long time.
Sure.
They just happen to be getting public exposure.
Okay. Maybe that's what it is. But then you see different things that come to the forefront based on new treatments or things that they've learned about the clotting factors and all this. And we'll get into some of that as well today. But I mean, I've learned so much from you. Let's just say at the beginning of the show, for those who are tuning in, and some of you maybe for the first time, he's a malpractice attorney. That is what you do. Is someone coming in and saying, Clint, can you handle my divorce?
No.
No. You don't want to do divorce law, do you?
I don't. I'm board certified in medical malpractice law. Right. These are the cases that I specialize in taking, and we have to go through a rigorous process to become board certified, and because of that, this is the focus of my practice.
Okay, and medical malpractice, the definition, if someone's wondering, well, how would I know, is?
Yeah, it's a bad medical mistake that produces a bad injury. It could be loss of limb, death, impairment of someone's earning capacity that's significant, medical bills that they can't pay, brain damage, really the worst of the worst type of injuries that occur in a hospital or in a doctor's clinic. Okay,
and the I guess benchmark for determining that there are bad results in hospitals, so we can all have them, is standard of care.
Standard of care, which is just another way of saying the rules that apply to healthcare providers, doctors, nurses, that they have to follow the basic minimum care that they are to deliver to a patient. And when they provide less than that level or deviate, as we say it in our business, then they are potentially liable for malpractice.
Right. The bottom line on that is that if a doctor does up to the standard of care and beyond, and you still have a bad result, then you don't have a case because they're not miracle workers. Some people are going to die or have a situation that doesn't resolve itself.
And you know, truth be told, Nick, the vast majority of cases or potential claims are situations where they're bad outcomes, where the doctor didn't do anything wrong or the nurse didn't. I come in when there was something done wrong and it produced a horrible injury.
All right, well, the only way you're going to know if you had a bad outcome, if something was done wrong, is to have someone like Clint investigate that. So if you're sitting at home right now and you're thinking about a situation, either you, a loved one, or a friend that maybe was home after something and it didn't go right, you want to check it out, and it's important you do it in a timely fashion.
Absolutely. 1 year from the date that you discover the injury, if you do not file your pre-suit notice within that period of time, you lose your ability to sue and lose your day in court.
Yeah, so statute of limitations. And that's, you've had cases come through your door where you said, hey, we've got ourselves a case here, we're going to do some good for you. When did it happen? And it was a year and a week ago.
Yes, the most painful discussion I have in my business is to tell a client who I know has a good case that I can't file it for them because they waited too long.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, all right. So don't sit on it, and you're invited to call this morning, 737-7587, if you want to jump in on that. And, you know, a lot of people talking about various cases. The local case here that got a lot of attention is the one over at Vanderbilt, that registered nurse. You know, people wondering about, you know, the 76-year-old victim. She was going to get, was an MRI or a CAT scan, and she was nervous about it, so they were going to give her something to relax her a bit. And the wrong drug was administered, and horrible death, really, when I think about it, the poor woman. And she goes through there and is paralyzed, and I guess eventually just stopped her breathing.
Correct. What's been reported is just what you said, and it's a fairly common situation where they give patients Versed or some other type of anti-anxiety medication to calm them down, because in order to perform the imaging, they need the patient to be still. And so they do this regularly. However, in this situation, according to the reports, this nurse was frustrated trying to find the drug that this patient needed, and there is another drug that has the same first letter, actually the first couple of letters, and this nurse overrode the system and filled the prescription for vecuronium, which is a paralytic. And I think I've told you, if you've ever seen the movie Serpent and the Rainbow, where these people who practice voodoo were giving curare to people, and it completely paralyzed them just enough to where they were conscious, but they could still breathe. This drug takes away your ability to breathe. It paralyzes your diaphragm.
You have to be on a respirator.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this woman who received this wrong drug suffocated to death, which is one of the worst ways you can imagine to die.
All right, so you have an issue here, and that's what scares a lot of people with doctors. And I've done stories with you on folks who have gotten the wrong pills. But it's all right, a mistake made, and how does that happen, and how do you prevent it? But what goes beyond this is that the nurse in this case, Radonda Vaught, is charged criminally as well. And you know, the case, I guess, is moving forward, but the TBI investigated. The Metro DA's office is prosecuting and moving forward on this the serious charge. I'm just curious, how often have you seen cases, and I think you probably have thought some of them were basically criminal, but that the person's actually charged? I mean, that's unusual. I haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah, it's extremely unusual. And I'll tell you why, Nick, when it comes to medical malpractice, there is a difference between malpractice and manslaughter, okay? Manslaughter is a much higher burden of proof that the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, whereas malpractice simply by preponderance of the evidence. And when you get into healthcare decisions, they can be much more technical and complex, such that a jury would have difficulty finding criminal liability. What concerns me about this prosecution, and I just want to say on the front end, I don't know all the facts, and I could obviously change my mind if I knew what the state knew, but given what I know right now, these prosecutions concern me greatly, because our tort system, our civil justice system, is designed to handle this situation. That's why we need to have a healthy jury system. We need to have patient rights to go and get damages in court and hold people accountable, so that our system compensates people, but at the same time changes things.
So they feel the pain and they change it.
Correct.
So it doesn't happen again.
The English used to call it the sting of the shilling. That way the wrongdoer or company writes a check, and that way they make changes. When you start criminalizing things like this, some may argue, and in politics some things have been criminalized. When you start going down that road, it's a slippery slope. Where do you stop? And here's the blowback that's going to occur.
Yeah, I was going to ask,
in my opinion.
Why does it concern you?
First of all, there are going to be particularly nurses who may decide not to go into healthcare because of this. Secondly, and a more immediate concern for me and my clients is, it's bad enough right now that doctors and nurses hide their mistakes. They go to great pains to hide their mistakes in the civil justice system, simply not to have to pay money. If a nurse thinks she'll be prosecuted for committing malpractice, then that will even be worse.
Okay,
they'll lie with impunity, because in their mind it's better to lie than to risk being prosecuted in criminal court.
And possibly go to jail.
Correct. You see what I mean?
Okay,
so it's going to make it hard for injured people to get justice and fair compensation, because the healthcare providers are going to go to greater pains to hide it.
Okay, now the thing is, and I understand, because I'm with you on when I kind of agree, except that if I knew more about this case. Now, she's charged with reckless homicide.
Right.
All right, and it's my belief, and I know nothing specific about it, this woman did not plan. This nurse did not want to kill this woman. So it's not an intentional thing. I don't think she thought, oh, I want to kill her.
No question.
There's no question in my mind. This was an accident, okay? Right. Now, was it carelessness? Was it whatever? Now, of course, you can make the argument, and we don't know what this nurse's state of mind was. Now, a drunk driver goes out, gets in a wreck, kills someone. No, they didn't go out planning to kill that person, but they are criminally held because they were, impaired.
As well they should be.
Now, as they should be. Now, we don't know if this woman, as far as I know, there's been no evidence that she was impaired in any way, but I'm wondering, to me, there has to be something more than just a mistake to take it to the threshold of being criminal. And I'm thinking that has to be very rare. That's my one thing where I agree with you. If it gets out of control, some nurses may decide not to go into it, or they'll cover it up more. But I think it's so rare, Clint, that there's a case like this that comes along. There's got to be something more there that the TBI uncovered that we don't know, that makes them think, this just isn't a careless mistake. There's something more that makes it criminal. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, for the sake of our system, I hope you're right about that. I hope there is more, because if there's not, then in my judgment, this is a bad use of the criminal justice system. It's going to harm patients in the future who need to get compensation. It's going to scare off some healthcare providers who might otherwise go into healthcare. And again, it in my judgment creates a slippery slope where does it end? You know. But yeah, you and I were talking off air. If there's any evidence that this lady was impaired, or had a history perhaps of being impaired, I could understand that.
And we don't know if there is.
And we don't.
Yeah,
we don't.
I don't know.
But based on the facts on the ground as we understand them,
I don't see how.
I don't like this prosecution.
Yeah, because if that's true, you and I've followed a lot of the cases you've done over the years. Any number of those, you could say, could have been held criminally if the DA wanted to step in. They weren't all fatalities, but I mean, if that's all it is, and you've won some cases where just careless mistakes happen, but you would say that wasn't criminal. You would just say they need to be held civilly responsible.
Yeah, and you understand now, Nick, and we've talked about this so many times, why lawsuits are so important. Lawsuits prevent these things from happening. They allow people to get compensated, and they change bad behavior. When you start shutting the doors to patients who need fair compensation, who need proper damages, who need access to the courts, then this stuff starts happening. Then the criminal system comes in, which doesn't get anybody compensated, but locks people up. That is not the way we are supposed to be handling situations like this in the vast majority of cases.
Point taken. All right, let's see. We'll take a break. When we come back, Clint, we already have about 4 or 5 calls waiting to talk to you. Phone lines are open, 737-7587. By the way, we have like 8 to 10 lines. So you can call in. Clint's here until the 9 o'clock hour. Any questions about cases or about malpractice in general? He's the best in the state at that. We'll be right back after this.